But Robert Saleh completed an interview. That's out now. The Jags have said that. Real quick thought on Saleh. Where does he fit in all this for you? And should he fit for the Jags? Because I know you are a Vrabel guy. So I would think if you're a Vrabel guy, wouldn't Saleh be pretty high on the list, Saleh and Glenn, in your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Saleh's a guy who's very familiar with Jacksonville. I'm sure he knows a lot of people in that building. He comes across like a pretty genuine dude. And obviously, once again, a leader of men. So I wouldn't be mad at Robert Saleh. But once again, you got to, like, for instance, I'm not mad at Robert Saleh because I know you're going to get the motivating factor of the culture building. But what you have to take into account with Robert Saleh is what is going to be the plan then on offense, right? Because this is kind of what happened to him in New York. Wasn't really a plan there, and then they didn't really do their thing like they were supposed to. And, to be fair, and I'm not going to like credit all of this to him, but that defense regressed a lot this year in New York too when he was the head coach. All of a sudden, Sauce Gardner fell off for some reason, right? So, I mean, while that's not necessarily his responsibility, that's his defense that we're talking about in New York. So that raises a little red flag. But to me, it comes down to who the offensive coordinator is going to be with Robert Saleh.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, again, that's part of the equation. But that's part of the equation for Aaron Glenn and everybody else too. So the one thing I would say about it looked like it was going to fall off anyway. He just wasn't there long enough to basically say that was on him. It was really when he left that it kept falling off on the defensive side of things. You wondered if he would have stayed, would their defense have played a little bit better as the year went along. Listen, I like Robert Saleh, man. He's a great dude. I think he is all that stuff that you feel with the Vrabels and the Glenns and everything else. I think he is that. I really do. And so that's okay. Like, that's okay. I do think you got to figure out the offensive side. I also think there's an element of this. Okay, it was clunky in New York. Is that just because it was New York, because of ownership, because of Rodgers, because of everything else? Can he be the coach-centric guy here? And also, what's it feel like getting a guy that was just fired 4 months ago? That's an odd thing when you're hiring a coach, is to hire the fired guy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but like, what's the difference though? Like, okay, so Robert Saleh gets fired, he waits a year, like Vrabel, and then he comes back and now he's in high demand. Like, what's the difference between getting fired in the season and waiting another year? Like, I think it's one thing if a coach is out of the game for 2, 3, 4 years and you try to bring him back because then it's like, well, has the game kind of passed you by a little bit? But it makes a difference to me if he was fired, this past season and now could be the coach of the Jaguars as opposed to making him wait a whole year and then bring him in.
I think in my mind, and this is unfair to Coach Saleh as well, probably, but in my mind in this cycle, because I feel so strongly that they're going with a young offensive guy, I think Glenn is going to interview well all over the place, and it sounds like the Jets are pretty hot on him anyway. I feel like Saleh is not going to get another head coaching opportunity this cycle, which makes him, to me, the fallback guy for the Jags. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of like a plan B, plan C kind of thing. I get you.
Yeah, I feel like that's the way. I don't. That's kind of disrespectful to say to him.
Well,
I'm just telling you, it's like the feel. That's the feel I have, because right now, if I were to put this in an envelope, where's Robert Saleh going? I'm picking like San Francisco defensive coordinator this year.
Yeah.
That's the way I feel about it.
No, I hear you, but at the same time, okay, so let's just play this out real quick. Let's say Ben Johnson goes back to Detroit. Let's say Glenn goes to New York. Let's say Cohen, I don't know, Dallas for whatever reason. Okay, what are we talking about then? Talking about Brady, I guess? We talking about, like, now we're kind of on that second tier, and while maybe teams don't really visualize Robert Saleh leading their franchise, I think in Jacksonville it can make some sense, right?
Yeah.
Like, stop trying to like look at it like through the Saints lenses or through the Jets. Like, what does Jacksonville need, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone needs something different. Everybody has tried different things in the past and it hasn't worked out, and we have to let history be an indicator a little bit. So I'm not going to compare ourselves to the Bears. I mean, like, I'm gonna in terms of like, what job's the hot job. I can compare it like that, but I feel like every organization has different needs, Brent.
Yeah, that's fair. It's a good point. And listen, I don't think Saleh would be like, oh yeah, let's go. But I also think you could do worse. Like you could do worse than Robert Saleh, and it would not as excite the fan base as much, and it might actually work out in the end. Like you could really look at. Would I be stunned at the end of the day? Like if the Jags got Saleh, and you just mentioned Cohen goes somewhere, and Ben Johnson goes somewhere, and Aaron Glenn goes somewhere, and Saleh's the best one of the bunch as we look up 3 years from now? I don't think I would. If I phrase it that way, I would not be stunned if that's the case. I think he's a good coach. So I think, I know it's weird to say you could do worse, but let's be honest. You can do poorly enough even if you get your best guy or the top guy that everybody wants. It always doesn't work out in the NFL, much like getting the best quarterback in the draft. It's not always the best way to go. You got to find the right one along the way.